Wherever Spain's aristocrats and high-profile people gather, there's always this young guy who looks really boyish. But he moves through these powerful circles like he grew up in Europe's upper class. Some say he works for the royal family. Others claim he's a government employee. You might think he comes from a super wealthy or even noble family. But the truth is, he's actually a nobody. A guy who's managed to fool pretty much the entire country's elite. Francisco Nicolás Gómez Iglesias was born in 1994 to a working-class family in Madrid. From childhood, his parents realized he was very outgoing and extroverted. He always loved being the center of attention. Even when he was just a little kid, he really liked having the cameras zoom in on him. His parents sent him to a Catholic school for rich kids in the Lex neighborhood of Madrid. But in reality, Nicholas was the only kid in the class who didn't come from a wealthy family, so he quickly learned how to fit in with the others. That's how he started playing the role of a rich kid. Even his dream job was clear from childhood. He wanted to become the Pope. But not because of the responsibilities of being Pope, rather because he wanted to live in a big palace and have servants and bodyguards. Nicholas was there with his parents too. It was at this ceremony that he showed his special talent for the first time. The same talent that would later help him, along with his rud, to enter the circles of important and wealthy people. He always tried to be wherever the cameras and attention were focused. At that memorial ceremony, 10-year-old Nicholas casually walked up next to the TV reporter who was covering the event. He drew so much attention that the reporter was forced to interview him. This became a pattern that repeated itself many times in the following years. At any political event or gathering in Madrid where the cameras were present, Nicholas was always in the front row among the adults, as if he was one of them. When he was a teenager, he almost got expelled from the Catholic school because of his poor grades. But going to a public school without privileges and full of rich kids was never an option. That's why he went to a famous sports school in Madrid. Even though he didn't know how to play any sports, let alone being a professional athlete, God only knows how he managed to get into that school. At the age of 14, Nicholas went back to live with his mother, not because his parents weren't taking good care of him. He wanted to build his own life without having to put up with his parents' questions and answers. So he started hanging out at a fancy club where the kids from wealthy families used to go. At 15, he started working at this club and organized parties for Madrid's elite kids. He was chosen as the supervisor and organizer of parties for the rich youth of Madrid. There, he was the one who decided who was allowed into the party and who wasn't. That's why everyone wanted to be friends with him. But pretty soon, just hanging out in the lives of rich kids wasn't exciting for him anymore. Nicholas was after influence and power. Some of his acquaintances at the parties were kids of politicians from Spain's conservative party, the Partido Popular. These connections opened the doors of politics for him. He started attending the events and meetings of this party and acted as if he was one of them. With his high self-confidence, or maybe just a lot of luck, no one ever questioned who this young guy was or what he was doing next to the country's top politicians. Nicholas introduced himself as the head of the party's youth organization. You might be thinking right now, how is that even possible? In a party, without any election, without any vote, this kid became the head of the party's youth organization. But believe it or not, that's exactly how it happened. He recruited a lot of young people for the party. Maybe that's why no one questioned him. Eventually, he managed to pull off a big move. At a press conference held by former Spanish President José Aznar, Nicholas sat right next to him. Tons of cameras zoomed in on Nicholas for 15 years. and his photos were spread all over the Spanish media. Nicolás's entry into powerful circles and influential people became possible mostly thanks to his photos and connections. He basically made sure to show up at every event, rubbing shoulders with top executives, the mayor of Madrid, high-ranking politicians, and TV personalities. Then he would post those photos on social media. These pictures painted the image of a young elite, and everyone thought he was without a doubt one of Spain's brightest minds, now reaping the benefits. Nicolás even spent some time in the VIP section of Real Madrid Stadium, a place where important discussions and influential relationships were formed. In short, he traveled around in limousines, flew on private jets, attended official government ceremonies, and even when he was at City Hall, he went out on the balcony and waved to everyone. No one ever asked who this young guy was. Or maybe they just assumed that since the Partido Popular formed the government after the 2011 elections, Nicolás had also reached the peak of his success. Now, this party's connections had reached power and influence all across Spain. Nicolás was right in the middle of all this. He had a close relationship with Ramón García Llogas, the former Minister of Commerce. Even though Nicolás was quite young, he would organize parties for Ramón and was by his side at important political meetings. He was even involved in some of Ramón's political decisions. Of course, Ramón strongly denied these connections. Nevertheless, there were WhatsApp messages between Nicolás and Ramón that showed their relationship was very close. His opponents claimed these messages were fake, and that Nicolás had impersonated Ramón and used two phones to fabricate the conversations. But a lot of people doubted these claims, because there were plenty of photos and videos showing that Nicolás was present in Ramón's inner circle. For Nicolás, attending important meetings between politicians and business leaders had become routine. To avoid suspicion, he had a special tactic. During meetings, he would put his feet up on the table. This move not only confused the top executives, but also made it clear to them who was really in charge. His behavior seemed to show that these meetings were so normal for someone like Nicolás that they didn't even matter to him anymore. There's even a documentary about Nicolás on Netflix. In that documentary, Nicolás himself said, "I believed in myself so much that others believed in me too." This sentence explains well how a teenager at such a young age managed to reach this level of deception and trickery. At 18, Nicolás enrolled to study law. According to him, he had no fear of the university's tough entrance exam. He even said that with a fake ID card, which he got thanks to the Spanish intelligence service, he managed to get into the university. He claimed that the Spanish intelligence service had used him as a spy for years to gather information from elite circles. But interestingly, Spanish intelligence officials either strongly denied this claim or simply refused to talk about it at all. Maybe they just didn't want to admit that they themselves had been fooled. One of the strangest parts of the story is how Nicolás ended up with a luxury villa in one of Madrid's affluent neighborhoods called El Viso. This villa was 700 square meters, and it's not exactly clear how he managed to get the keys to that house. No matter how much I searched, I couldn't find anything about this issue. There was only one place that said maybe one of his colleagues had given him the keys and asked him to look after the house. Now, having this villa didn't just give Nicolás a fancy address in Madrid. It actually became a new spot for parties and for attracting his wealthy friends. This way, not only did he gain influence in Spain's economic circles, but he also offered his friends and acquaintances in political circles to hold their important meetings at his house, or better yet, at his villa. It was a cozy place where no one could bother them or find out what they were saying, except for Nicholas, of course. In short, he was really talented at pretending to be anything. He played different roles and always made it seem like having a relationship with him would benefit others. Sometimes he'd introduce himself as a government employee. Sometimes he'd say he was an intelligence officer. And sometimes he wouldn't say anything at all. This whole intelligence officer act made the elite circles really respect him. They thought to themselves, someone with this much confidence who never talks about himself must be some kind of aristocrat, right? This approach of his made it so that whatever he wanted was provided for him. He didn't pay for expensive meals, or for flying on private jets, or even for VIP seats at Real Madrid games. Nicholas had good connections with influential people and had gathered a lot of information about the country's elite, and that became his weapon. That's why many people said maybe someday this could be used. Besides, a lot of people didn't want to seem stingy in front of Nicholas, who they thought might be an aristocrat at the time. There were even rumors that some businessmen gave him money so he would introduce them to political and economic figures. There's even evidence showing that Nicholas tried to influence the lawyers who were investigating Princess Cristina, the daughter of the King of Spain, for corruption. Just imagine how far he had gone. But Nicholas had one main victim here, and that was clear as day. That victim was none other than the royal family. Yes, they were the ones who fell for Nicholas's tricks. June 19th, 2014 was a big day for Spain, the day of Felipe's coronation as the new king. For 20-year-old Nicholas, this was also the most special day of his life, because he pulled off his biggest scam on that very day. He had planned everything out weeks before. Using a stolen identity of a boy his own age, he managed to get 2 invitations from the royal palace for himself and a female entrepreneur named Catalina Hoffman to attend the coronation ceremony. Of course, Catalina still claims to this day that she wasn't fooled by Nicholas and that her invitation had nothing to do with him. She insists that she was invited by the royal palace herself, but there is no evidence for that. The royal palace never sent any invitation to Catalina, but 2 invitations were issued for Nicholas's fake identity. Before we continue with the story, please support us with a like and subscribe. Thanks a lot. At that ceremony, Nicholas once again took selfies with a bunch of famous people to show off how important he was. After all, someone invited to the coronation must be a special person. At least, that's what everyone thought. People believed the royal palace wouldn't just invite anyone. But then, a particular photo went viral worldwide just a few months later. Not only did Nicholas have no trouble mingling with the guests at the ceremony, but he even managed to sneak himself into the line to congratulate the king and queen. That line is reserved only for Europe's elite. Tons of cameras filmed 20-year-old Nicholas shaking hands with King Felipe and Queen Letizia to congratulate them on the coronation. At just 20 years old, Nicholas managed to get himself into the inner circle of the most powerful political and economic figures. He even managed to fool the royal family. But eventually, Nicholas was exposed. In August 2014, at the height of his scamming days, Nicholas met with Jorge Camin, the head of a bus company. This meeting was arranged by one of Jorge's acquaintances. Jorge, who was the head of the bus company, had been told that Nicholas was a go-between for the royal palace and the vice president. At first, Jorge wasn't convinced, but eventually he agreed to sit down with him at the table. A day before the meeting, Nicholas himself calls Jorge and confirms that their appointment is still on. But he also has some big news. He says someone else will be joining their meeting, and that someone is none other than King Felipe for himself. At first, Jorge is suspicious. He calls the restaurant where the meeting was supposed to take place the next day and tells them that one more person has been added to their reservation. The restaurant manager tells him that a representative from the royal palace had already called and informed them that the king would be coming. Jorge is deeply impressed. The next day, when Nicolás arrives, 3 cars with flashing lights and a motorcycle escort stop in front of the restaurant. Several people get out of the cars, looking like his personal bodyguards, but the truth is, these were Nicolás's police friends who were helping him put on this show. Instead of King Felipe, Jorge now finds himself face to face with a young guy who looks more like a kid than someone involved in politics or the royal palace. Nicolás apologizes and says the king couldn't make it, but insists that the meeting should still go on. Nicolás showers Jorge with compliments and praise. He spins all sorts of wild stories for him, and Madame says that Jorge's company is so important for Spain. She even claims that the king and the vice president said so too. But at the end of the meeting, Jorge returns with doubt and suspicion. He decides to do something no one had ever done before. He goes and asks the party in the royal palace who this Francisco Nicolás Gómez Iglesias really is. By doing this, it's like he sets a boulder rolling that ends up wrecking everything in its path. The funny thing is, Nicolás never imagined that one day someone would question his lies like this. But Jorge reports the matter to the police. After the initial investigation, the police can't believe what a huge scam has taken place. Nicolás wasn't just a simple con artist. They were dealing with a professional fraudster the likes of which Spain had never seen. The case reached the highest levels of politics, society, and even the aristocracy. The police formed a team called Operation Nicolás to investigate the lies and fake identities of this 20-year-old guy. He was secretly monitored for a week. The police saw how he worked on fake documents in internet cafes and even put official government logos on his papers. He used fake license plates and flashing lights to pass himself off as a government employee. And with all this, he even went to university. Finally, on October 14th, 2014, Operation Nicolás was carried out. Nicolás was arrested on his way to university and was charged with document forgery, fraud, and deception. When they searched his childhood room at his grandmother's house, they found a ton of fake documents. Fake letters from the Spanish intelligence service, counterfeit ID cards, a portable police siren, and license plates from government vehicles. You know what's interesting about this story? After the charges, Nicolás told the media in surprise that he didn't understand what all the fuss was about. He said he hadn't done anything wrong and had always acted in the best interest of the country and the royal family. Even the judicial authorities themselves couldn't believe how Nicolás had managed to deceive the highest levels of power in Spain. In court, the judge asked how something like this was even possible. How could a 20-year-old guy, just with lies, gain access to the most important institution in the country? It's truly shameful. Shame on you. But unlike the authorities and the police, the people of Spain weren't really shocked by what Nicolás did. By now, the media had even nicknamed him Little Nicolás. Nicolás became especially popular among young people, because in their eyes, all he had done was lie to those old, conservative elites and, in a way, hold up a mirror to them to show their true selves. People would say that the political and economic leaders were nothing more than empty words and a neat, suspiciously perfect appearance. One night, Nicolás became famous in Spain, not for what he always tried to pretend to be, but as one of the smartest con artists in Spanish history. social media was flooded with memes about Nicholas's love for taking selfies and how he seemed to be everywhere at once. They even made an app where you could create videos using Nicholas's face. 2 years after his arrest, he appeared in a special celebrity edition of Big Brother. By then, he was even officially invited to Real Madrid football matches. In 2019, Nicolás was named Person of the Year, and there was even a Spanish rap song made about him that said, "He's got money, he's got cash. This is our own bald Nicolás. A little party, Cali style. This is our own bald Nicolás." The investigations against Francisco Nicolás Gómez Iglesias went on for years and turned into a political issue. During this time, new connections between the economy and politics were occasionally uncovered, and Nicolás was involved in them too. But during all this time, he was out on bail and continued to appear as a popular guest on TV shows. There too, he kept telling his famous story, that he hadn't lied and was really an intelligence officer who was just following orders. However, the psychologist who evaluated Nicolás during the investigation rejected this claim, saying he was neither an intelligence officer, nor a royal palace employee, nor a vice president. All of it was just a grandiose and imaginary delusion. In short, in June 2021, his first trial was held, and for stealing someone's identity to take the law school entrance exam, he was sentenced to 3 years in prison. A month later, another 3 years were added to his previous sentence for impersonating a government official. In December 2022, he received another sentence of 3 years and 5 months for abuse of position and forging documents related to government activities. In March 2023, he was convicted once again. This time, it was for bribery to gain access to confidential information from the police database. This time, another 4 years were added to his previous sentence. But even though all his sentences have been issued, he still hasn't officially been in prison. His lawyer has appealed each time, and that's why the investigation and trial of the Nicolás Cachlu case has been going on for over 10 years. But these sentences didn't affect his popularity at all. Nicolás is still one of the most popular stars in the media and on television. He finally got what he always wanted, fame. Now, he doesn't even need to take selfies to prove he's famous. People themselves asked him to take selfies with them. It's unbelievable. Be sure to leave your thoughts for me in the comments. Thanks a lot.